My envious sister tried to ruin my baby shower by announcing fake paternity test results, but her husband unexpectedly served her with divorce papers in front of everyone. I am 30 years old, and my sister Minnie is 31. As a child, she often said that she envied me and didn't like me. This greatly upset me because she was my only sister, and I loved and admired her. I always looked up to her with respect and tried to be closer, but she constantly pushed me away when she was unhappy. When she was in a good mood, she was a wonderful sister, fun and creative. But when we fought, she would say terrible things and try to physically harm me, hitting, pushing, and pulling me. I wanted to get along with her, but she always hated me. Minnie was more sociable and succeeded in fashion. She loved experimenting with hairstyles and getting tattoos. Mom sent me to school earlier, and Minnie and I ended up in the same class. She didn't like this because she saw me as a competitor, especially since I was more successful in my studies. I consistently got A's and B's, while Minnie mostly got C's and B's. Her strengths were in art, theater, cooking, sewing, and dancing. I fell in love with the violin thanks to my mom, who encouraged me to learn to play the instrument, and I also became interested in French and Korean languages. Minnie was part of the school theater group and spent evenings rehearsing plays. But one day, she was kicked out of the theater club after a fight. Minnie found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her with another girl from the club, and in retaliation, she beat her up and set her bag on fire. This incident led to Minnie being asked to transfer to another school. Although the conflict was resolved after the parents paid compensation to that girl, Minnie had to repeat the 11th grade, and her relationship with her parents significantly deteriorated. My romantic relationships never lasted more than 6 months, and my sister was always to blame. Every time I started a normal relationship, she tried to ruin it. Once, I really liked a guy named Derek, and our relationship started to get serious. We were planning to introduce each other to our parents, but suddenly, the day before, he blocked me everywhere: phone, messages, Facebook. In desperation, I went to his house uninvited to find out what had happened. When I arrived, Derek confessed that Minnie had contacted him, expressing concern and telling stories about my past, portraying me in a negative light. Minnie told Derek that I was seeing other guys while dating him and sent explicit photos to one of her friends. I was terribly embarrassed. I tried to explain that it was all lies, but Derek was confused, wondering why my own sister would lie about such things. After many arguments, Minnie finally admitted that she did it out of envy, thinking I was too good for Derek. She didn't care that she had ruined our relationship. This incident was a turning point for me. I realized that if I wanted healthy relationships, I needed to stay away from her. We both had a dream to study abroad. She really had huge potential, but it seems the fear of everything new led her to choose computer science in our country, following our father's advice. Watching this, I realized that I didn't want my parents to influence my life decisions. I worked hard to get a scholarship abroad. However, despite my efforts, financial constraints prevented me from leaving, so I compromised and enrolled in a university in our country, choosing the specialty I wanted. Nevertheless, a year later, my desire to study abroad had not faded, and I continued to look for opportunities. Eventually, I got a scholarship and was able to go abroad to start my studies again. My parents were very sad that I was leaving. On the last evening at home, Minnie apologized to me for everything she had done. I don't know what prompted her to do this, perhaps the fact that I was going so far away and now she would be left alone with our parents. I didn't want to start any drama, so I forgave her. During my studies abroad, I underwent significant changes. I lost weight, met new people, found my style, and gained confidence. Graduation was a major milestone, but the following year was difficult as I tried to find a job. Eventually, I managed to get a good job and settle in a new place. Meanwhile, Minnie graduated from college in our country. She told me she wanted to come study for a master's degree in the country where I lived, and I supported her. She started applying for scholarships to various universities, but her applications were constantly rejected, becoming increasingly disappointing for her. One day, she came to visit me and stayed for 10 days so I could show her around the city. She saw that I had changed. When Minnie made fun of my clothes or hairstyle, I just ignored it. It was strange that she tried to control what I should wear or how I should behave in public. If we went out to eat, if my friends were gathering, she would say she didn't like them and that I should find better friends. Sometimes I would spend the whole day with friends, and she would suddenly become strange for no apparent reason. When I showed her my workplace, she was surprised to see how big my office was. I enthusiastically told her about the new opportunities in my career, but she fell silent and didn't even express joy for me. Instead, she changed the subject to herself, saying how she wished she had the same opportunities and regretted some of her past decisions. Later, at dinner, she said she wanted to extend her vacation and stay with me, but I understood that I couldn't continue to be under her constant judgment. I politely told her that she should find another place to stay if she wanted to stay longer, because she clearly had some issues with me that she didn't want to discuss. At that moment, Minnie lost control. She started screaming that she was tired of my presence in her life, that everyone always compared her to me, and that her achievements were never considered enough. I pointed out to her that she always made me feel inferior. Minnie said there was nothing special about me and that she could have achieved the same if she had the same opportunities. I replied that we had the same start. I applied to universities and worked hard to get a scholarship, while she failed and for some reason blamed me for it. This enraged her, and she said I was just a spoiled girl and that she was sorry I was ever born. Those words hurt me so much that I just got up from the table and locked myself in my room. 2 days later, when she left without apologizing to me, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I realized how much we both had changed over the years, and honestly, I started to feel some disgust at her presence. Over time, I met my boyfriend James, who worked in the same field as me. Our paths constantly crossed, and we had mutual friends who introduced us one day. It was very fun to talk to someone who understood my work, and I thought we would just be friends. It turned out that he liked me, and the next day he invited me on a date. We started dating and were together for 2 years before he proposed. I grew close to his family since they live in the same country, and he met my parents via video call. We were already planning the wedding when I was offered a job that paid twice as much as my current position. The only catch was that the new company was based in my home country. I discussed it with my fiancé, and we both agreed that it was a great opportunity, so I accepted the offer. So I returned to my home country, and my family finally met my fiancé. My parents adore James, and now my dad plays golf with him on Sundays. At my new job, everything was going great, and James soon found a job as well. All this time, Minnie avoided me like the plague. She refused to meet me and James, although my parents insisted. She made up random excuses not to meet us. We hadn't communicated with her for a long time, and I understood her reluctance. Honestly, it suited me. I was afraid that she might try to ruin my relationship with James, as she had done before. After several months of living back home, James and I decided to get married. We bought tickets for his parents and grandparents to attend. We wanted a small and cozy wedding just for family and closest friends, as well as a short honeymoon since we were both very busy with work. We chose to have the wedding in the huge garden at my parents' house, and they were incredibly happy. Grandparents, parents, sisters, brothers, and friends gave speeches and showered us with love and blessings. The only one missing was Minnie. She told us she was sick and couldn't come. The food was delicious, and everyone danced until midnight. We had a great time and then James and I flew off on our honeymoon. A week after returning from the honeymoon, I was at my mom's showing her photos from the wedding. And then Minnie appeared. While I was telling my mom how happy the grandparents were at the wedding, Minnie interrupted and asked if James and I were experiencing financial difficulties. I laughed and said that I now have a job with a much higher salary than before, and James is also doing well financially. She immediately snidely remarked that maybe that's not the case since I decided to get married in the backyard at my parents' house. My mom stood up for me and told Minnie that there was nothing wrong with that and that I wanted a modest wedding, so it made sense. I agreed and said I appreciate her concern, but James and I don't like unnecessary showiness, despite the high income, as we prefer to spend money wisely. Minnie became very angry hearing this and said that I was, as always, just boasting and probably lying about my salary. I shook my head and said I don't need to boast to her, adding that we are no longer children and it's time for her to grow up and stop making up stories about me. I said that's why I was glad she didn't come to my wedding. This enraged her, and she left crying. My mom tried to smooth things over, but Minnie wasn't listening. Later, she told the grandparents and some of my cousins about what I had said and some of our argument. I sent her a message apologizing, but she didn't bother to respond. Over the years, I tried to keep my distance from her, although we had a few pleasant moments. James eventually met her and immediately disliked her. This was because Minnie constantly made fun of him. For example, we both like Disney movies, which Minnie finds boring, and she said James might not be manly enough. I was very offended by her for saying such things, and later she apologized to me and James. Minnie also, it turned out, had repeatedly expressed to my mom her opinion that James was allegedly trying to control my life. When my mom talked to her about this, Minnie said she just had a bad feeling. Every time she met James, she had a bad feeling. One day, when my mom and Minnie came to my place for lunch, Minnie was telling us that she was having problems with her boyfriend Larry. It turned out that Larry had moved in with Minnie, but after 2 months, he lost his job. Since then, he hadn't worked or paid any bills. I firmly told Minnie that she needed to kick him out since he clearly wasn't contributing anything. Then Minnie suddenly asked if, since I earn more than James, should I kick him out too? I replied that although I earn more than my husband James, he also brings in sufficient income to our household and doesn't sit on the couch all day eating chips and playing video games. My mom agreed and said James sacrificed his career so I could get this high-paying job here. Minnie took this badly and started saying that men should always earn more and that it's strange James is content with the situation. I replied that not all men have such fragile egos as the ones she dated and that James loves me for who I am. Minnie, of course, didn't listen to me and later even married Larry. Despite being unemployed, Larry also had a hot temper, and we all saw this at their wedding when he got drunk and started a random argument with a waiter. Minnie and some of his brothers had to restrain him. It was very awkward, and I felt a little scared for Minnie, but I knew she would never listen to me, so I kept quiet. Over time, I noticed that the fights between Minnie and Larry only increased because every time they argued, Larry would kick her out of the house, and she would come to stay with our parents. Our parents were also worried about her, but Minnie refused to talk to them. One day, we found out from Larry's mother that Minnie had apparently cheated on him with one of her colleagues. They had a huge fight, but in the end, they decided to try to save the marriage. They even started going to couples therapy. This year, I found out I was pregnant. James and I were over the moon. My parents congratulated us and said how proud they were to become grandparents soon. They assured me they would help at every step. When Minnie found out about my pregnancy, she asked James and me what names we liked. James and I had already discussed several names, but I didn't want to share them with her because I knew how judgmental she could be. I firmly told her no and explained that the name would be announced only after the baby was born and officially chosen. Minnie insisted that this was a terrible idea, saying we should discuss names with other family members to choose the best one for the baby. I replied that I didn't want anyone to interfere with the name choice since it's our baby and we will name it as we wish. Later, when it was time for the baby shower, the party for the expectant mother where she receives gifts, I asked my mom to organize everything. I trusted her and didn't like planning anyway. I also asked my mom to tell everyone not to bring gifts since we didn't know the baby's gender yet. I just wanted to have a good time with friends, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, and learn more about motherhood. On the day of the party, I was pleasantly surprised that my mom had invited only my closest friends, as I wanted. I was having a great time chatting with friends. When Minnie appeared in a t-shirt that said, "Future Godmother," my eyes widened in shock, as I had no intention of making her the godmother of my child. It was a bit awkward since Minnie kept telling everyone how she had long dreamed of being a godmother, which annoyed me the most. She didn't even discuss it with me. When the party was coming to an end, my mom invited my husband, father, and Larry to join us later since we were going to find out the baby's gender. When James and I cut the cake, we were overjoyed to find out we were having a boy. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and my friends hugged me. However, Minnie suddenly stood up and said she had something very important to say. Everyone fell silent and looked at her curiously. She looked very serious as she pulled out a document and held it up for everyone to see. Then she announced that supposedly a few days ago, I had taken a paternity test and found out that James was not the father of my child. She dramatically stated that the test results indicated another father. The room fell silent, and my husband James was visibly upset. He turned to me and asked what was going on and if what Minnie was saying was true. I shook my head and looked at Minnie, waiting for her to explain. My mom asked Minnie what the hell was going on and why she was making up such nonsense. She snatched the documents from Minnie's hands and immediately noticed that even in the mother field, my name was not there. At that moment, Minnie started laughing. My friends looked at me in disbelief. She confessed that she had downloaded a fake paternity test from the internet and came up with this plan to prove something. She stated that she wanted to expose James, showing what an abuser he allegedly was. The whole room was in shock and confusion. I asked Minnie if she was okay, since my husband had never even raised his voice to me, let alone been abusive. She started saying that it was impossible for a man to be happy when his partner earns more than him and that she had long suspected James was controlling me. She cited random examples and concluded by saying that, according to her, James was angry when she announced the paternity test results. I shouted at her that the reason James was angry was that she publicly humiliated me by saying our child was not his. I told her that my husband had never humiliated or kicked me out of our home and that maybe she was projecting her problems onto me. I saw Minnie's face turn red with embarrassment. I continued telling her that I was sick and tired of how she had envied me all my life and how disgusting it was that she had turned my baby shower into such a circus. I told everyone that Minnie had always done this and recounted how she had lied about me to my ex-boyfriends. Minnie stood there humiliated. My mom told her that this time she had gone too far. Suddenly, her husband Larry, who had been silent until then, stood up in the awkward silence and approached Minnie. To everyone's shock, he handed her some papers. Minnie started asking him what those papers were. Larry said that family therapy obviously hadn't helped and he realized they were toxic to each other. He told Minnie that he had been thinking about divorce and wanted to serve her these papers tonight, but since she liked making scenes, he couldn't go home with her anymore. He said he was tired of the drama and left the party. The room fell into an awkward silence when Larry finished his speech. Guests exchanged embarrassed glances, not knowing how to react to such an unexpected turn of events. Minnie stood there stunned and silent, holding the divorce papers. Her attempt to ruin my baby shower with her antics backfired completely. Instead of having the last laugh, she faced the collapse of her own marriage. When the festive atmosphere turned into heavy tension, the joyous event turned into a grim episode as everyone realized what had happened. I had had enough. I asked James to take me home, and he immediately agreed. I hugged my mom goodbye, and she assured me she would call me later. Minnie tried to approach me and apologize, but I didn't even look at her. As you can imagine, everyone was shocked by what had happened. People call me to see how I am, and some have reported that Minnie burst into tears as soon as she left, and my parents kicked her out, refusing to listen to her excuses. I feel sorry for her since she has now lost not only me but also our parents and her husband. I feel a little guilty for yelling at her, although at the time it seemed justified. Wasn't I right to block her envy in front of everyone? After she tried to pass off a fake paternity test, well. Let's all answer this question in the comments and provide a point-by-point explanation. Preferably. Now let's move on to the update. Update 1. A month has passed since the baby shower. I talked to my parents about my sister, and they agreed that it would be best for all of us to completely cut ties with her. Minnie feels no remorse and is now telling everyone that I allegedly made a huge scandal over her prank and publicly reminded her of her past in front of her husband, which, in her opinion, led to his decision to divorce her. Larry has since spoken to my parents and apologized for how he treated Minnie in the past. He announced that he kicked her out of the house not because he abused her but because during their fights, she would hit him with her fists and feet in the face, and he felt unsafe around her. This was a shock to us since I always thought Larry was to blame, but then he showed photos of a broken nose and bruises. Fortunately, Larry loved her enough not to go to the police, or Minnie would have been in jail long ago. Obviously, Minnie and Larry's relationship was toxic, and honestly, I'm glad they're getting a divorce. My parents talked to Minnie and made it clear that they no longer want to see her at their house. Minnie, of course, burst into tears, but my mom was so angry after what she did at the baby shower that she just said everything she thought and said that if Minnie ever comes near me or my child, they will get a restraining order. My parents also directly told her that she needs to see a psychiatrist since there is clearly something wrong with her mental health. Minnie refused help and claimed that our parents are unfair since they support me more than her. In short, I blocked her everywhere, as did James. We installed surveillance cameras in our house, and if she ever shows up, I will immediately call the police. Update 2. 8 months have passed since the last update. I am happy to announce that I recently gave birth to a boy. The pregnancy was not easy, but I am so happy that our child is with us. We named him Alex. I can't believe I finally became a mother. Now our home is filled with the laughter and cries of our little one. James and I are getting used to our roles as parents and, despite all the difficulties, are enjoying every moment. My parents support us every day as I get used to my new status. James's parents will flight us next month. Minnie hasn't bothered us anymore. The last I heard about her was that she and Larry got divorced, and she decided to pack her things and move to another city, possibly to start over. I'm sad that my own sister is no longer a part of my life, but as a mother, I have to protect my little one. Well, be sure to write what you think about all this in the comments.